I want to talk about the 5 tips for your first week of school. And the first one might shock you a little bit. Tip number one, stop explaining rules. Now, you might be thinking, what? No, like I have to have my rules. Rules are the foundation. Here's the thing, guys. If you teach middle school students or high school students, they know the rules. They've been told pretty much the same rules for school and for the different classes since kindergarten. And if you go into any teacher's room where they post their rules, you're going to see that they're all very similar. Be respectful, be kind, be nice, no chewing gum, no cell phones. These are the same rules. So we need to stop taking up time in our classes teaching rules that our students already know. If you did a poll and asked them, hey, what are the typical school rules? They'll be able to tell you. So, unless you're teaching young elementary school students that are still kind of getting used to it, you don't need to go over the rules anymore. Now, there might be some different rules for the school. If they're transitioning from elementary school, then yes, the middle school might have some different rules, and the high school might have some different rules. But those are school rules. And usually, those are done during an advisement or assembly during the first few days. So you should not be taking time out of your class, those precious times, teaching them the school rules when they should already be done during some type of advisement or assembly, and they're in that school handbook. Now, we all know that they usually don't read that handbook, but they're there for them. So I want you to stop teaching rules. That's tip number one. Tip number two, it's not about the rules, it's about the procedures. That's what's really going to set the tone. Now, with each teacher, they're all going to have different procedures of how they run their class and what they do to help their class flow smoothly. So it's really important to spend your time teaching the procedures, reteaching the procedures, and practicing those procedures. Now, you have to remember, especially for teaching middle school, in middle school, they're going from elementary, where they had one teacher the whole entire time. They only had to learn the procedures for that one teacher. Now they're in middle school or even high school, and they're having to learn the procedures of 6 different teachers. So put yourself in their shoes, right? They've been enjoying their summer, they've been relaxing, doing whatever they want. And now it's the first day of school, and they are getting bombarded by all these different procedures from all these different teachers, and they're all different. In one class, if they want to sharpen their pencil, they might be able to just get up and go sharpen it as long as the teacher is not giving directions or speak into the class. But in another class, they might have to raise their hand first, wait to be called on to ask to go sharpen their pencil. It can be very confusing for the students to remember which teacher wants the papers collected one way or come into class another way, or what teacher allows you just to get up and maybe blow your nose, and what teacher asks you to, raise their hands first. So give them some grace. This is the time when, if they forget a procedure, remember they've got a lot of stuff going on right now. It's not because they are trying to get you upset. No, they just simply are trying to figure everything out. So just smile and just remind them what the procedure is and practice. Have a set procedure for when they come into your class. So, for example, for me, I greet my students at the door with a smile, and I try and call them by their name. In the beginning, I'm still getting used to it. But they come in, and my procedure is, first, they're going to look at the board, and it's going to tell them what materials they need to get out for that day. They then take out their materials and their backpacks, go into an area in the classroom. I have 4 different areas. My students are not allowed to keep their backpacks at their desk because I don't have much space. So it makes it more difficult for me to walk around my classroom. So I have them instead, put their backpacks to the back there. Then they have to write down the agenda for the day. I don't have them write down the homework. I have them write down the agenda. I want them in their planner to know what we covered in class that day. So that's what they're doing next. And then they're doing some type of check-in activity. It could be a warm-up question. It could be a check-in question, but they're doing some type of activity. And this all takes place during the first few minutes of my classroom. Also have a procedure for maybe how you're going to have students get materials, how you're going to collect papers. For me, my students all sit in groups. Every single student in that group has a number. So I might say, okay, number 4, you're getting the materials for your group. Or number 4, it's your job this week or for this month to, when you come in, you're checking that materials box to make sure everything's there. And when you leave at the end of the day, you're checking it again to make sure, again, that everything's there. For papers, I have folders. Every group has a folder, and my folders have different colors for every class. So when I need to collect papers, even though I'm mostly digital, but when I do need to collect those papers, I just put the folder on their desk. The group members have 1 minute to put their paper into that folder. Then I collect them. That's it. It's nice and simple. I grade the papers, and when I return them, I return the folder and they take out their paper. So it's nice and simple. So again, have procedures and practice those procedures. So that's number 2. Number 3, do something fun that builds community that very first day. Now, most times during that first day, the teacher is going over the syllabus, they're going over the rules, they're going to be talking about who they are. So they're introducing themselves with their students, right? And then maybe at the end, the students have time to do some type of get to know you activity where they're filling in something about themselves, right? They're going from class to class, sitting there and listening all day long. So when they come into your classroom, you're going to change it up. You're not going to go over the syllabus. You're going to give them the syllabus. So that way they have the list of suggested materials that they can bring home to their parents, but you're not going to go over it on the first day. You might cover it the second day or third day, right? It doesn't have to be covered right away. The important thing is they have that list of suggested materials. So you give it to them, but you don't go over it. And you're not going to introduce yourself that first day either. No, you're going to do that again, second or third day. Instead, they're coming and you're going to have some type of team building activity. I have done the Save Sam activity where they have to, put the gummy worm in through the gummy lifesaver. My favorite is also to do the cups activity where they have to use the octopus, which is rubber bands with string attached, and they can't talk to each other. And each person has a string and they have to stretch the rubber band to grab the cup and then stack the cups. And they have different levels, different activities they can do with that. I've also done the one where they have different shapes and they have to take those shapes and create a square. And then I give them another shape. And we talk about how in science changes whenever we get new evidence, then we have to change our ideas about it. So then they have that new shape and they still have to make a square. So all of these are building teamwork. They're building community. The kids are doing discussions. You could also do the one where they give them some dried spaghetti and a marshmallow and see who can build the tallest tower. So some tape there. Do something fun though. Get them out of just the sitting and getting and get them engaged. They're going to remember you and your class when they go home. Okay. And that's what you want. You want them to be like, oh, okay, if this is the first day, imagine what the other days are going to be like. So that's my third tip. Do something fun that first day, something fun and engaging. Fourth tip, start building those relationships. We know that to reduce behavior problems in school, It's not about rules. It's not about having super strict rules. It's not about having harsh punishments. It's about building relationships. If you can build those strong relationships with your students, you are going to reduce the behavioral problems. Because when students feel they have a teacher or an adult that is rooting for them, that is cheering them on, that really cares about them, they're going to want to do well. They're going to want to do well for that teacher, for that adult, right? So it's building the relationships. Start greeting them at the door. Learn their names as soon as possible. How can you do that? Well, instead of spending time lesson planning, instead of spending time grading things, don't do any grading in the very beginning. I would recommend, if you can, don't do any grading the first 2 weeks. You can check things in, but we're not grading anything. We're going to save that time, and instead we're going to use that to memorize our students' names. And we're not going to lesson plan, right? Save yourself some time. Go look online, get something already done for you, or take what you've done in the past. Have something ready to go, so that way you don't have to spend time creating the lesson, creating the worksheets, creating the activities. Just go get something already done for you that you know is going to be fun and engaging. Have it ready to go. Then you can spend that time memorizing the students' names. I like to have it where I print out, the students have their pictures on our attendance. So I print out their pictures in their seats, and I have that ready to go. And as the students are doing their engaging activities, I'm just walking around the classroom and I'm memorizing their names. That's what I'm doing. And when I have that conversation with them, I'm using the name. So I might say, Jose, this looks great. Do you think that, what would you do if you did this instead? So I'm going to use their names every single time, because for me to help myself remember names, I have to be using them. So every time I'm engaging, I'm going to be using their names. So building those relationships, getting to know what they're interested in, understanding what their family life is like, understanding what they do when they go home. That's is what's going to help reduce your behavior problems later on. So again, start building those relationships. That's tip number 4. Tip number 5, start incorporating the SEL. Now, we just came off a crazy year, right? And it's changed a little bit, but we're still going to be facing a lot of things, right? Things have changed, this summer, maybe they did get a chance to get out, but maybe they didn't. And for some students, school is their only safe place. Home is not a safe place. So school is their only safe place. For other students, school is a place of high anxiety. They have trouble being at school. So start incorporating SEL in that first week. Now, for me, I actually spend 1 day a week on it. I take time out of my science class to focus on mindfulness and habits of success. I want to help my students focus on their emotions, focus on breathing, calming themselves down, focus on understanding what successful people are doing and the skills they have, the habits they create. So I spend 1 day a week the whole entire year on it. I highly recommend you at least start it in the beginning, teaching your students a little bit about mindfulness, teaching them how to just do some deep breathing, a few deep breaths when they're feeling stressed, when they're feeling anxious, when they're feeling, frustrated, just to calm themselves down, because then that releases the brain and it releases the mind to actually start working. Because when they're so stressed and they're frustrated, it shuts everything off. Their brain cannot work correctly. So we need to teach them that. We need to show them, hey, this is what's happening when you're like this. This is what you're doing to your brain, your mind, and breathing is going to open it up again. So we need to teach them that. Also, remember these students, they're coming in and they probably had like no organization this summer. They had no schedule. They were doing what they wanted. They need to start making those habits again. They need to start working on a schedule, managing their time, setting some goals, but not just setting the goals, making a plan to achieve them. So take some time during your first week to do some goal setting, to teach them how to make a schedule, to do time management, to do some mindfulness. Incorporate that into what you're teaching. You take that time now to do those things in that first week, and it's going to make the rest of your year so much better. Remember that first week or two, it's setting that foundation. Go slow to go fast. All right, that was 5, but I got a bonus for you. One thing you can do to get your students more involved and have them start taking ownership of their learning is to have them help you set the class expectations. That's right. Students have great ideas about what makes a good, positive learning environment. They've been through enough classes and they have been through enough teachers that they know what works and what doesn't. So get them involved in it. Instead of saying, these are my expectations, ask them, hey, if you would like a positive learning environment, if you would like to have a classroom where students are helping each other out and, everyone is learning and they're engaged, what would it look like? What would the students be doing? What would the teacher be doing? What would the expectations be? And have them come up with their list, right? Have them share the list with a partner and then share it with a group and come up with the top 3 and then share those with the class. Also put together a list of group expectations. They know what needs to happen to make group work, right? They know. So have them take ownership of that. And then what you can do is you can write it up and have them all sign it, just like a contract. All right, you guys came up with this list. Here's your contract. You're agreeing to what you guys came up with. Then when you have a student who might be struggling with one of the expectations that they themselves came up with, you can have that conversation with them and say, hey, is this your signature? Is this what you came up with as a class? You agreed on this, correct? So what can we do? What can I do? What can you do to help, make sure that you're reaching those expectations? What are some extra support that you'll need to reach that, right? Put it back on them. Have them come up with ideas for what they need for extra support to make those expectations that they, again, came up with. So again, that's my 5 tips, 6 tips with that bonus. The 6 tips to setting off your first week of school. Remember, number 1, stop explaining the rules. You don't need to. The students know them. Just call it out. Say, hey, I'm not going to go over rules. You guys know the rules. I could ask you what the rules are of a classroom and you could tell me right now, right? So don't talk about the rules. 2, do teach, practice, and reteach your procedures, and give your students some grace and patience when it comes to them learning those procedures, because it's going to take them time, especially if they have a whole bunch of different teachers that they have to learn the procedures from. 3, create a fun, engaging teamwork activity that you can do that first day. So no syllabus, no talking about yourself. Do those on another day and just get them engaged, having fun, learning about their fellow peers. 4, start building those relationships now, right? Start building it, start memorizing their names, get to know your students. 5, incorporate SEL, help your students just learn a little bit about mindfulness, set their schedules, do some time management, create those goals. And then 6, the bonus, get your students involved in creating the class expectations and the group expectations. Let me know what you think about my 5 tips. And If you need anything, if you want something ready to go, you're like, oh, that teamwork idea sounds great, the SEL. I do have an introductory course to SEL. It does talk about how to introduce mindfulness and how to do goal setting. You can find that in the comments. Have a great day.